I was dirtbagging around western North Carolina and sleeping at campsites, a short hike off of the Blue Ridge Parkway. I'm sitting by the fire late one night when a guy just steps out of the shadows into camp and scares the bejesus out of me. He apologized and explained that he just got turned around on the hike and was finally back on the right trail, but he was hoping to sleep at my side till the morning. I allowed it and gave him a beer and a bratwurst, and we just talked about the trail. Nothing unusual, and by the time I woke up, he was gone. The next night I was camped another 20 or 30 miles down the parkway, late as all hell. I was about to call it a night when guess who shows up? The same dude. Still not super weird or concerning or anything. I was mainly shocked by how fast he seemed to be moving on foot. I figured either he was just hitchhiking or knew a good shortcut trail. As the crow flies, it would have been just about 18 miles or so from the previous night's spot. Not at all inconvincible. The night proceeded about like the one before it, and by daybreak he was gone again. This next day I decided that I would just hang out around this area and experiment with this guy, just to ease that nagging feeling I had. I moved literally across the parkway and parked alongside it, as always, then started hiking a trail, with my pack as normal. This time though, I broke off of the trail and hit among a rock formation from which I could see my truck and trail. About an hour later, as dark fell, it all made sense. Headlights. Dude had a vehicle and had been following me using my truck to locate me. I waited until he hiked well down the trail, searching for my non-existent campsite before I booked it out. Still, I was not totally convinced he meant me harm. Maybe just wanted a friend, I don't know. I quickly loaded up and moved again, this time backtracking past the first site that I mentioned and continued on another 20 miles or so. Sitting up late again, making a hobo pie and shooting whiskey, when he showed up for the third time. I knew something was off about it. I showed the same hospitality as I had been, but I was way more wary of him. It could have easily been coincidence, just us moving in the same directions, me making a camp and relaxing all day, while he stacked up the mileage on the trails running alongside the parkway. But for him to show up that way, after I turned around, backtracked 50 miles, was no coincidence. Sure enough, that night, I woke up in my hammock to this guy literally kissing my neck and ear. I cracked him hard in the ribs, jumped up, sent my bowie to his neck, and made threats. Something to the effect of I was going to cut off his balls and stuff them down his throat. I don't remember my exact drunk John Wayne line. I was a good bit bigger than him, but I'll give him credit for having the stones to possibly have the foolhardiness. He made a lunge for my knife, so I tossed it out and reached and grappled him into a chokehold and cranked down on him till he was unconscious. I hogtied that son of a bitch and left him there. Slashed 3 of his tires too, on the way out, and drove to Asheville for a few days. This is maybe a little unconventional for my sub, but I still wake up with cold sweats over it. I was backpacking through Pisgah National Forest in North Carolina with my dog. Just the 2 of us, and we were just exploring the woods around the Little Lost Cove, open orienteering style. So we were not on an established trail or anything like that. We'd been hiking throughout the day, following this little creek, and towards the evening, I noticed my dog was acting abnormally. She was very much caught in a scent of something that just wouldn't ease up. This continued for about 2 hours or so before we made camp. That night in camp, she remained on edge and staring off into the woodline. I went about camp business as usual. Then at around midnight or so, I got this prickle, like I was being watched intently. I let the feeling ride for a little bit and kept tinkering with the fire. Then I heard the bush rustle. I got up from the fire and shone my flashlight up into the hillside. A figure on all fours just managed to escape my beam. All but the tail. It was a tail that I knew was not supposed to exist in the southern Appalachians. I cast my light across the hillside, and this time I caught eyes. 2 glowing yellow orbs, just watching and waiting. At that point, I went into a fury, grabbed my tomahawk and charged up the hill after the beast, screaming curses all the while. The watcher ran off, but neither I nor the dog slept that night. The following morning, we left camp, just at first light, and began hiking the mountain to the ridgeline, which would lead us out. Atop this ridgeline was fresh mud and a series of tracks. Tracks left by an animal that officially no longer existed in the eastern US. They were catamount tracks. They commonly go by cougars in the east. But we'd been stalked by mountain lion just the same. Those tracks ran across the ridge, revealing that it had been there, watching and stalking us throughout the previous day as we hiked through the creek bed below. They weren't bobcat tracks, I know that. They were way too big, and those eyes I saw were too. I truly believed that if my dog hadn't given me those red flags, I would have been mauled that night. It remains one of my personal, scariest experiences ever. I've just stumbled upon this subreddit, and I've thoroughly enjoyed all the experiences and stories shared by others. I finally felt compelled to share one of my own. And while it may not be as provoking or profound as the other stories told by the others on the subreddit, it still fills me with this strange and mysterious feeling after all these years. I grew up on Long Island in New York State. My older sister, her boyfriend, and myself often would walk trails and the beaches at night. On one particular evening, the 3 of us were walking and walked straight to Camp Hero State Park. It was a full moon, so it was very bright out. As we were walking the trail, we stopped to relax and look out at the water. My sister's boyfriend sparked up a joint, and we all partaken and relaxing. Whilst we were gazing out onto the open water, we spotted a small light in the distance. My sister inquired as to what we thought it was. Her boyfriend said it was probably a light from a boat in the distance. I agreed, and we didn't really think of it much. However, as moments passed, we noticed that the light seemed to be approaching us, getting closer by the minute. As it moved closer, it appeared not to be on the water, but above the water in the sky. We soon realized it was not a light on a boat in the distance. We continued to speculate what it possibly was, and I came to the conclusion that it must have been someone's little personal drone or something. But as the light came closer and closer, the brightness got stronger and stronger. If you know Camp Hero, you know that there are cliff edges that hang over the water. There we were, standing on the edge with this orb steadily approaching us. Within the span of 5 minutes, that orb was no longer in the distance, but hanging right in front of us. It was no longer over the water, but rather over the sandy beach. We stood there, staring at it. It had a whitish purple glow to it. Despite being night, it was very bright out due to the light of the full moon. On the high visibility evening, it became evident that this was no drone. This light was a standalone, with no machinery of any kind attached to it. And it just kind of hung out there about 10 feet in front of us for about 30 seconds. It then just disappeared in such a way, it almost seemed to envelop itself. We all decided to get the hell out of there, and that was that. That was back in 2015-ish. I've since visited that same particular park many times since, and I've never seen anything like that again. Maybe we were all just a bunch of stoned teenagers, and it was just some sort of group delusion. But that night will stick with me forever. That park itself is shrouded in mystery, and I can only speculate on that orb. Maybe perhaps it was just a remnant of one of the experiments conducted at Camp Hero back in the day. Anyway, that's my story. Have any of you had any spooky experiences on Long Island? We are certainly not backwoods by any means, but these things still happen around these parts. I could give you a million times as a kid and a young adult that I just felt scared or paranoid playing in the woods. It's a beautiful place, and I spent my entire childhood getting lost, not literally, out there by myself or with my friends. As kids, we never got too far out there, but you could actually see the progression of us venturing further and further out as we got older because of the forts and carvings that we did. This one particular time, like 1,000 times before, my friend and I had just graduated high school. It was our last summer of freedom, and we spent the entire summer camping and hiking out there. We had decided to try to find a new place just to set up camp, and walked for what felt like a few miles before we came to a nice clearing. The area was relatively new to both of us. We both camped out and set up and made a fire and got everything going as planned. Now we were just waiting until nightfall. We ended up smoking some weed and playing Monopoly. For the sake of the backstory, on my friend and I, my buddy is a small, really goofy guy, but comes from a family of foresters and always had a deep understanding of all of the trees and different plants that you come across. We had no fear of going and camping by ourselves. If I spent 10,000 hours in the woods, he probably spent 50,000. As for me, I'm a taller, sturdier guy. And as we got older, I spent more time worrying about women and sports, and the woods became a place for smaller parties. Also, I never had the balls to camp out alone. In fact, older me wouldn't even go at all when I was alone, because I could never shake the feeling of being watched, which was just paranoia, but still an uneasy feeling. Anyways, camp is set up, fire is going, but it's getting lower and needing wood. Sun is down and we're both cutting up and having a good time. My friend is sitting on this little chair he always brought and loading up makeshift bongs, and I was crouched breaking some excess limbs off of some of these logs that we had gathered to make a fire. All of a sudden, this strong breeze cuts through the clearing. I couldn't tell you the suddenness of it, but my friend and I both stopped immediately and looked at each other. The breeze went just long enough to flicker our fire down to a small flame. We both sat there completely still, almost in total darkness, and neither of us said a word. Across from us on the other side of the fire, we could hear footsteps. They sounded like someone was running and would slow to a walk and then run again. Definitely 2 legs. By the sound of it, they were pacing back and forth over the same spot. Then, just as it started, it stopped with a softer crunching of the underbrush. I knew by the sound it had taken a crouch. I was crouched still and knew I was staring right at it in the dark. My friend grabbed my shoulder and said, "Buddy." And when he did, I felt a surge of fear come over me. I could feel it, hear it in him. I had been so fixated on the footsteps and rationalizing what I had heard that I hadn't even considered being afraid. But this was true fear. It was raw, and it made me feel helpless. I could hear my friend, after a while, grab some leaves, and he dropped them on the fire. For a split second, the leaves covered the fire, and we were in pure darkness. Then the fire sprang back to life. We both quickly grabbed more leaves and threw it on the fire. I got some more sticks and logs on there, and neither one of us took our eyes off of that spot or moved much for over an hour. Finally, the leaves crunched and slowly walked off. Whatever it was had sat and crouched watching us without moving for far longer than any animal would. It was until after the footsteps disappeared that I realized the smell had disappeared as well. It smelled like a paper mill, like spoiled eggs almost. For the rest of the night, besides whispered remarks, neither of us really moved or stopped looking at that spot. Nobody went into the tent, and I had a very short light sleep, sitting on the ground with my head rested on my hands. My friend never went to sleep. In the morning, we packed up and silently walked back home. To this day, we talk about it. In the 7 or 8 years since it has happened, my forester friend has not camped by himself out there since. Thanks for watching. I really hope you enjoyed it. It's been a while since I've done a camping story, so if you do like these and you want to see more, make sure to let me know down in the comment section. Make sure to like, comment, and if you're new to this channel, make sure to subscribe. We just hit 1K. I can't believe that. That is so surreal to me. It literally was a pipe dream, and now it's reality. I can't thank you guys enough. You guys are definitely what keeps me going and doing this. So just know that. There's gonna be a live stream maybe this weekend, if not the next weekend. But I'll make sure to let you guys know on the community posts. But also, make sure to check out the links to the description, like my Twitter, Instagram, everything like that, and my Gmail if you would like to submit a story. Also, make sure to take a look at the channel member section on the channel, where I post extra bonus stuff. But with that being said, stay safe, stay scary, and I'll see you in the next one. We hit 1K. Holy shit. Oh my god.